Okay, welcome, Avril. Thank you for coming, showing up, not coming.
Hi, Upward. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure. It is
Well,
absolutely
it's
my
it's it's my
pleasure.
pleasure to have you on. I haven't had anybody to talk about relationships yet, so and I think it's also interesting to talk about it now with all the COVID going on, like all the lockdowns and things like that. And maybe well, the first thing that I would want to ask you is something that I think everybody asks in any field, like what are the relationship secrets that nobody
Oh,
knows?
oh my gosh, relationship secrets. So, well, I'll just first start by saying I am Avarel M. Smith. I am a certified dating and relationship coach, former matchmaker, and now founder and CEO of Seeking Synergy. And I help single women break the toxic dating cycle and let go of the emotional baggage so they can attract and maintain the healthy relationships that they desire and most certainly deserve. Because people are wanting and needing healthy relationships, right? But most people don't know how to go about doing
Yeah,
it. Some people have never had, a healthy relationship in their entire life, but I'm sure they've dreamed of it.
yeah,
I'm certain that they have, but when you don't know, you can actually apply certain things to your relationships and your life. So yeah, the five secrets that what I call secrets to remodel your relationship from routine to remarkable, they are actually from my master class. And there, like I said, there are five of them. And we can jump right into them. And yes, and
yeah. Let's go. Let's go.
I expect you to be interactive with them because I'm certainly going
Oh
to
yeah.
ask you questions as I cover them. So the first secret is a secret of focus. Now, I call this a simple yet powerful secret. It's all about focusing on you, being your authentic self, building your self confidence, your self esteem. You know, um, Self love is the key to finding true love. And when you're confident in who you are, you attract like minded people. It has to start with you. It has to start with you.
with
Do you
the
agree?
with working on yourself, how let's say how can I think it might be challenging to let's say work on yourself as you are in relationship because like you have to divide your attention many times to like your work, your partner, and also I think what you said about putting yourself first, it also might be the challenge that well it's hard to put yourself first a lot of times or many people find it hard to put themselves first, so maybe how can what kind of mindset they need or how can they learn to start to like put themselves first and take care of themselves.
Well, the first thing, Astra, is what is important is that before you even get into a relationship, you need to be what I call the best version of yourself.
Yeah,
Because you need to be you're not looking for that person to complete who you are, right? You should be a whole individual by yourself. You recognize that you're responsible for your own happiness. If you've wanted to travel the world, if you wanted to start your own business, go ahead and get all those things done. Just go for it. We all have dreams and aspirations, goals and aspirations. Make those happen. Don't just sit around perhaps waiting for a partner who can contribute to anything that you want to accomplish in life. Go ahead and do that for yourself. you know
actually
um
that brings me like another question, which I think we talked about last time we had conversation, how to be single or like how to approach being single because there's a lot of times I think people even want to run away from being single or shy away from being single by getting in relationship, but I definitely agree to what you're saying that you have to be a whole person by yourself before you get in relationship. um, and that's what I usually tell people, until you are ready to be alone for the rest of your life you're not ready for a relationship because then you will try to have that other person to fulfill something that you haven't fulfilled within yourself. So maybe like what would be your advice, professional advice on like how to be single or how to approach being single?
Well, Astra, it all starts with your mindset. You know, we've heard it, but some of us don't actually realize just how powerful our mind is.
Yeah.
So it all starts with your mindset. And so, I tell women that being alone does not equate to loneliness. Like, I love my alone time. It does not equate to loneliness. And, we have to, like I said, focus on having that mindset where you understand that being single may just be temporary. And even if it's a longer temporary situation than you really want it to be, it is important to know what, um, being alone and getting ready for a relationship looks like. Like, you don't just jump into a relationship because you're lonely, you're running on emotions. You're going to more than likely pick a loser who's
Yeah.
going to definitely thrive off the fact that you're desperate for a relationship, and more than likely he will not be someone that is a match for you. It's someone who's more than likely someone who more than likely would be taking advantage of the fact that you are needy and clingy. That's the last thing you want to do. So it is all about knowing who you are, loving who you are, you feeling confident in your body, feeling confident in your skin, feeling confident in where you are in life. And even if there are things that you want to improve about yourself, because we all have things that we want to improve about ourselves. You do that, but you do that because you want to, not because someone else recommended it, not because you're trying to be who you think this man wants you to be. It has to be all about you. But it all starts with your mindset and who you are. If you believe in yourself, if you feel you're enough. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't feel that they are enough. And they go seeking for what, like you said, someone else who may fill that void.
Yeah, it's so what would you say is that you said you have to, which is something that was I really like paid attention to what you said when you said that you have to prepare for a relationship. You don't just like jump in it, or and even like I think many times people might be like, yeah, but I have or maybe like what would you say to somebody who was like, I have never been out of a relationship. I don't know how to be alone. I don't want that. I need somebody in my life. So maybe how to work with that, like what would be how you start, maybe okay, let's say how you start working with when you feel like you need somebody, how you learn to be alone, and then what would be the process of um, getting ready for a relationship.
Well, I guess the starting point would be finding out, the backstory of why that person feels that they need someone, that they don't know how to be alone, that they don't want to be alone. Because there's always a backstory. We all have stories,
Yeah.
right? We all have a story to tell. So there's some underlying factor that has, that would have that woman thinking that she doesn't want to be alone, that she can't be alone. She needs someone in her life. And it would be getting to the root of that to truly understand how to help her move forward and get her mind in the right, place to where she understands that, like I said, being single temporarily is not a bad thing, but you have to be ready for a relationship in order to be the kind of partner where you can be a whole person in that relationship, not a half person and thinking the other person's going to complete you, or
Yeah.
to be able to substantially provide value in that relationship, to bring all the goodness that we have inside of all of us. But if you don't feel that you're enough, if you don't feel that you're valuable and that you can bring that value to a relationship, then yes, you need to stay single, and the need to be in a relationship should be put on the back burner, because you need to have the right mindset. So it would be working on finding out what is the root of, that woman thinking that she doesn't want to be alone. She doesn't need to be alone, but that she needs to be in a relationship because something is causing that.
Yeah, makes sense. So what is the process of, like, let's say before you get in relationship, if let's say you have worked with the mindset, is there anything else that you should work on before you get in relationship or you start to like look for your partner?
Yep, you need to know who you want to share your heart and your life with. And so what I like to talk to my clients about when it relates to that is, think of it this way. What do you do before you go to the grocery store? What do you do?
Yeah, we'll make a list.
You make a list. And why do you make a list?
Usually you make a list. If you don't make a
You
list, then you just end up buying whatever.
There you go. So why do you make a list?
Yeah, well, to know what to buy, or yeah, pretty much like to be clear on what you want.
Absolutely. There you go.
And also not to
Think of
waste your time.
There you go. I love it. I love it. You took the words out of my mouth. I knew you were going to say that is exactly the same concept, Astra, that you should put in place when looking for a partner. You make a list. You have a well thought out and written list of who your ideal partner is. Now, of course, you won't have a name or a face, right?
Yeah.
But you have the qualities that he must have. You know what personality traits he must have. You know what you absolutely need him to have, your must haves. I call them your must haves and your must have nots.
Mm.
You'll know what deal breakers should signal the end of your relationship. you know um I think it's safe to say that most people get in relationships based simply on an attraction, right? You see someone you're attracted to, or someone is attracted to
Or like
you.
maybe the first impression that you get as well.
Correct. And that's how most relationships start. But just having that attraction is not sufficient. Like you need to have like what I call a well thought out and written list of your ideal partner. And another thing that's important is knowing what your values are. I call them key life values, because you want to have a partner who has similar values, because those values are what will hold your relationship together when those storms come. Not if, right? It's not if the storms are going to come, it's when.
Yeah.
So you need to know who you want to share your heart and your life with. You have to have someone who can relate to you on, your values when it comes to family and um your beliefs, and honesty. And you just need to have someone who can relate to you on the same level when it comes to what I consider your key life values,
I think
because
another
that
important thing
is
is that,
critical.
yeah, keep going.
No, 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 you go
Oh,
ahead.
you're done? Okay. I think another
Yeah,
important thing.
I was basically finished with that part.
Okay. The other thing that I would add actually is maybe to make another list of who you need to become to attract that person. Because I think many times you make this list and you just sit and wait for that person to arrive. But you actually have to become somebody who that person actually will want to be around. It's not enough just
And
to
that is
update your list.
perfect. I'm glad you say that, and that's why, yes, we work on becoming a better version of yourself first. Yes, like
Yeah.
that is the first thing that we work on, because you can't want to have someone with all these qualities and all these attributes and you don't even match up to that person, right? you know
Yeah, and then
um
you're surprised why nothing is happening. Well, you're just not at
exactly.
their level.
Exactly. Like you have to be the person that you also want to attract on some level. It's only fair. It's only fair. So yes, we absolutely work on getting you to being a better version of yourself, improving anything that you need to improve about yourself, whether it's about your mindset, you have self-sabotaging beliefs. You need to increase your self-esteem, your self-confidence. Yes, definitely. That is important before you actually try to attract the right partner, because what you put out into the universe is what comes back to you. So the energy you're putting out determines the type of person you're going to attract. So
Yeah, I think
yes.
that's something that like everybody needs to remember, because I have had several people tell me like, how do I attract the right person? Well, I'm no relationship expert. Like that's not what I specialize in. But I usually tell them like you can't attract the person you want to have in your life just by staying where you are. Like why
Exactly.
would they, well, no offense, but why would they want you if you are maybe below their level? And it's like, not to offend them, but it's just a fact. Like if you want to attract
It's a
that
fact.
person, they have to see some value in you for you to attract
I
them. So just
absolutely
start
agree.
to work on yourself. And I think another thing is that when you start to work on yourself, you naturally create bigger gap between people that you might have dated before, that you're like, oh,
Yeah.
this is not that like attractive or interesting for me anymore because now I'm like level up.
You certainly have leveled up. Absolutely. That is so true. And to add to that, it is so important that, when you start dating and wanting to attract the right man, you do not lower your level or lower your standards because he isn't able to level up to yours.
Yeah.
But you keep your standards at that level that you want them at. And don't think that they're too high, or that you need to lower them somewhat. I'm sure, women do that all the time, right? They're going to lower their standards a little because they're going to think that they're eliminating so many men. And we already have a shortage, and the pool is low. The pool is low. And so they're going to eliminate even more if they start lowering their standards. But that's where we definitely go wrong. You keep those standards because there are good men out there. There are men that are looking for the kind of relationship that, most women are also looking for. So yes, you do not lower your standards because he's not willing to level up to yours. You wait until you find someone who is.
I think
And
that's
that's
also where patience comes in.
it. Absolutely. I
Not
absolutely
like
agree.
wanting to rush things, because I think it really depends on what kind of relationship you are after. If you're looking for somebody to like spend the rest of your life with, like you can't even get to know them within a month. Like it will take you time to actually get to know them, and like not like inside out, but get to know them good enough where you can start to even consider whether you want to spend time with them. But like it's not just the way they look or the way they are, it can be how they approach different situations, and you can't really
Yeah,
see that unless you are with them like long enough to be in those situations.
that is so true. Like you want to, when you start dating, you need to see that man in his element. You need to see how he is around his family, how he treats his mom, because that factors into how he's going to treat you, right? You need to see him when he's angry. You need
Yeah.
to know what he looks like when he's angry, how he behaves when he's angry, that way you'll know if you can expect him to lash out at you. If he's going to be disrespectful to you, is he able to maintain his composure when he is angry? Is he going to take out his frustrations on you?
Yeah, that's
You need.
actually, it's funny because I was listening Jordan Peterson. He said, I think there was a question, what would you advise a young couple? And he was like, learn how to argue.
Yes, yes, that is important. That is so key, Austria, because I tell women all the time, conflict in your relationship is not bad to a certain point, but it's how you handle it. So when people say that they don't have any conflict, that is some crap if you ask me, because what that means is that there are issues that they're not handling because you're two different individuals. Now, clearly, you have similar values, you have a bond, your team, teamwork makes the dream work. You're a team, but at the same time, you're two separate individuals. So you're not going to agree on everything. So there's always going to be some level of conflict. But conflict to a certain point is not bad. It's just how you handle it. And so, what most couples need to learn is just like the gentleman said, learn how to argue, because there is a way that you can obviously resolve conflict constructively, but you have to know how to do that. And you have to work on it, and
So
you have to be mindful
how
of
can
that.
one like resolve those conflicts like constructively? What would be your advice or the process that you would suggest how to approach it?
Definitely starting with timing. Timing
Mm.
is so key. It is so key. So, Oscar, you you get into the initial argument or a disagreement, right? And it's a topic that you want to talk about, your other half may not want to talk about. Um, the reason timing is so important is because, for two reasons. First, it's best to handle conflict when it arises. When you let it fester and fester, then you blow up, and that just creates, a whole other level of conflict. It escalates everything to a whole new level. You know, the other reason timing is important is because sometimes there are those times where you address it, but you address it and both of you agree that that particular time may not be the right time, whether it is that, your other half just got home from work and he's tired. That is not the time to try to have
Yeah.
a discussion about something that could get a little testy. So timing is important on two factors: that you address it right away, but even in addressing it right away, it may also be with the understanding that you either need to cool down, take a walk, take a half hour break before you come back and talk about it. Or perhaps, depending on the situation, if, like I said, your other half just got home from work, he's tired, he had a long day, he's not in the best mood, that's not the right time to talk about it. So timing is definitely key. Um, Obviously, learning how to control your temper, you know.
Yeah, I was about to add, like, it's really important to what I have noticed with people that I work with, like, when it comes to emotional control. A lot of times, when it comes to argument, you actually have to be aware of yourself instead of like pointing fingers, and
Yeah,
actually learn to control yourself when you
you
are
do.
like in that argument.
You do have to learn. And obviously, it would take work for some people more than others. You have to make a conscious effort to work on controlling your emotions, because you you think about, like, you hear the saying, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Well,
Oh
that
yeah,
is so true, isn't it? It is so true. As a matter of
I think I
fact,
say
John.
that to people all the time.
Correct. John C. Maxwell said it best, Astra. He said, people hear your words, but they feel your attitude. So, no,
Oh,
so you start, you raise your voice, you start folding your arms, and, women, the head rolling, the eyes, like, all of that is just going to make things worse. So you have to be so conscious of your controlling your emotions. And that's why it's so important to perhaps calm down sometimes, step away from the situation, maybe a half hour walk,
yeah.
probably listen to some relaxing music, jazz, something, anything to try to get you into a better mood before you have that conversation.
Or like, I think another way that people can approach it is to actually kind of like schedule that conversation, that now like you kind of have expectation what we will talk about, instead of being like lashing out, or like, even I have asked many people that have had arguments, I'm like, so now that you have this argument, so what is the positive result that you actually get out of it? And there has never been a time when they're like, well, actually we came to a really good conclusion, like while we were like shouting at each other. It has never been the case. It's more about like finding a way where, not like where you schedule it like few months ahead, like, but it's like within a week, or maybe that day or following day, where you both are in a good like space, and you can actually sit down and have this conversation. And also kind of can use that a little game where, or like practice where you have a pillow, and as the person who is holding the pillow, that's the person who is speaking. You don't jump in, you actually give me a
Correct.
space to speak, because many times what happens is that like you have this argument, or like you want to resolve the argument, but actually the other side that wants to step in, they don't really have space to step in, because as soon as you open your mouth, the other person just jumps back, and you just have no space to actually speak or say your side of the situation.
Yeah, it is. And you know what, that, and you're so right, because that's why I touched on the timing being so important, and if necessary, you agree to discuss it at a later time, because yes, you do have to calm down. And and when your partner is speaking, that's where that's where one of those key factors in relationships come in, where you have to be respectful of that person, right? You have to be respectful of his or her thoughts and ideas. And so, when that person is speaking, you absolutely do not interrupt. You wait until there's a pause, or you wait until there's a clear space or an opening. And if you need to, you can ask for permission, perhaps. Do you mind if I jump in right now? I have something to add to that, or I need to ask you a follow up question to make sure I get clarity on what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. It's so important to acknowledge that you hear what that person is saying, that you understand,
I
that
was
you
just about to jump in saying this. You
yes,
have to make sure you
that
actually understand
you
what
have
they are
to
trying to tell
understand.
you.
You have to understand, yes. You have to be empathetic. Like, you want the other person to be empathetic to you as well. So you have to show empathy as well.
And
You
like
know,
not in a
you
way that you understand when you think you understand, but they
exactly,
actually approve that you understood them correctly instead of assuming that I know what
absolutely,
you think.
absolutely. And that's why, Astra, and that's why it's so important to, paraphrase. So for example, so what I hear you saying is, um, from now on, we'll both have an equal say, or we'll have a discussion about, the expenses, or is it okay that you make the deposits in our checking account and I will pay the bills for XYZ month? Like, it's so important to get clarity on things when there is conflict. And that is how they actually get resolved. You paraphrase what the person is saying, because then they know you're listening. You're being very respectful of them, on what they're saying. You're understanding, but then you're also clarifying to make sure that there are no misunderstandings. You're not sitting there assuming, they're not assuming, because
Yeah.
assumptions do, right? So yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also the fact that they feel heard, that they
Correct.
actually feel like you put in effort to actually understand them instead of being right or being like the one who is winning the argument with all like ego games and stuff like that. Because I
Yeah.
think many times in arguments it's really important to learn to put your ego aside. It's not about you being right, because then you actually like kind of make the relationship worse, because then it's about who's winning instead of like we have to find a way to win like for us as a couple
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
like I'm the one who is better.
Yeah. It's not a competition. It's not a competition. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? You're working together. You're working together to make your relationship stronger, to make it better. You know, um, that's why I like the name of my business, and I put some serious name into it, Seeking Synergy, because
Mm,
you know, it is it is all about togetherness. It's all about togetherness. Stephen Covey's quote, synergy is better than my way or your way, it is our way. And it is what that means is creating something that works for both of you. Like you talk about not being right, or not wanting to be right. It's understanding what that person is saying. And it's so important to be listening, like
yeah.
truly listening. And that is how you're able to understand, you're able
And
to
like
get
not
clarity.
listening in a way where you wait until you can jump in.
Correct. Not just listening to, well, let's see when I get an opening to say something. Listening to truly hear what that person is saying. Truly hear what that person is saying. And that's the only way you're then able to paraphrase to get clarity, when you're truly listening. So yes, listening is very important as well. Not just trying to hear, not just trying to get your words out. That is why, Austria, we have two ears and one mouth,
Yeah.
because we're supposed to be listening more, speaking less.
Yeah, and a lot of
Yeah.
times I think like once you learn to listen, or like one thing is learning to listen, but also realizing that many things that you're about to say, they're not really beneficial. They're really like irrelevant. They are not going to help anything. You don't have to point out that they never do anything. Like you don't have to do it. It's not
Yes,
going to help.
yes. I'm so glad you said that. You know why? Because that is another thing that's so important that I teach my clients to absolutely refrain from using absolutes, because no one is ever always someone or always something or never anything. You know, those absolutes, they create more arguments,
Yeah, and
you
also
know.
one thing I would add is like when you communicate, I wouldn't say, let's say, oh, you never do this and that, but I would say, I feel like you forget this or forget that when it comes not
Yeah,
from me blaming the other person, but saying from my perspective, because maybe from their perspective, that's not the case. But now you attack
correct.
them and they're like, you don't understand me. Like, why you even assume this? And that's when you get
Yeah.
another argument about not
Another
understanding
argument
them.
ensues. I totally agree. And that's why the absolutes should definitely be left out of conversations, because yes, you're just ramping up the conflict or the argument to a whole other level. You know, you think of if someone told you, well, you never help do anything around the house. Well, that could only be but so true, right? I mean, he or she does something around the house, and if that person was not doing anything around the house, never, then it is up to you to address that issue. You know, not wait until it festers. And then, of course, one argument totally rolls over into another because it started with that, but now you let it fester for 6 months. And now you brought up six other things that
Yeah.
perhaps he doesn't even remember
Oh
happened,
yeah. I think
but
that
it's
bringing
clear
the
in your
past up,
mind.
like that's something
Yeah,
that so many people do. Because
yeah.
you have argument about one topic and then you're like, yeah, but like 6 months ago you also didn't do this, but it's like that's not what we're arguing about.
No,
That's the
no.
past.
Yes. And that's what happens when you let issues fester. And unfortunately for women, obviously we do it more than men. And I say we because we're women. But of course, I'm conscious of that. You know, when you know better, you do better. But women are more likely to hold back on addressing an issue because they don't want to create an argument.
Yeah.
They don't want to ruffle feathers. They think that not saying anything is going to maintain the peace. But that makes the situation even worse because, you know, not saying anything, it doesn't make it go away, it doesn't change it,
Yeah, and the other
but
person
it's
doesn't know
worse.
like what's the reason why you are the way you are if you don't even kind of bring it up.
Exactly. They just know that they're getting perhaps the cold shoulder. You're a lot shorter with your answers. You know, he asked a question and you may say, okay,
Or like
I'll be there.
when they ask
Don't
you,
worry.
are you like what's wrong? Nothing.
Correct. Your answers are totally short. Yes. Instead of, well, you know what, I'm pretty okay. Thanks for asking. Now it's, I'm okay. Or what's wrong? Nothing. Like you said, yes.
Yeah, it's
You
like
know, yeah.
and I have had conversations with several males about it that like and I have said it to several females as well, like you shouldn't expect the guy to read your mind. If something is wrong and he asks you if you're okay or something's wrong, don't say nothing. Then
Don't say nothing.
that's the place where you actually bring it up. And then like
Correct.
when and then like it's pretty funny that you say nothing and then you expect him to know like okay so like when you say nothing he's like okay cool like nothing's wrong, you know, but then
Then
you're
you're
like
upset.
oh so now you don't know that something is wrong and then you like get another
You're
argument
upset.
about like him not reading your mind.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? But people do that, don't they? People do that
Yeah.
all the time. They do that all the time. And I think part of that, like I just mentioned before, comes from not wanting to address the issue at the time, thinking that you are avoiding an argument, you know, or you don't want to get him upset. You know,
Yeah.
if things have going smoothly, you don't want to create an argument right now because you are set to go out to dinner and the last thing you need is to create, you know, just whatever reasons people give themselves for not addressing certain things at the time. But like I said before, you know, sometimes it is what is necessary is addressing it initially, but On top of that, even agreeing to discuss it at a later time when you're both in a proper frame of mind, when the timing is right.
Yeah.
Maybe when you get back from dinner. Now, can you get through dinner without probably bringing it up,
Yeah.
without stewing because it's not being discussed? That is totally on an individual basis, but timing is key. But yes,
I
addressing
think
the
like
issue.
another thing is that like you should start addressing those things early in relationship, because then let's say you're 6 months in and all of a sudden you're not happy. And until that point everything was okay, everything is fine. And like your partner can be like, so wait, what happened? Up to this point everything was okay. Like you didn't complain, nothing happened. But now all of a sudden you're like angry and this is bad and that is bad, and like you pretty much put them in a place where they're confused, because up to that point everything was okay because you didn't raise those issues.
Correct. And in your mind, everything was not okay all these 6 months.
Yeah.
In your mind, everything was not okay. But like you said, he had no idea. He had no idea that anything was wrong. And now you're just bringing everything to the forefront as if it just started, when in your mind and in your world, things have been that way for the past 6 months. Unfortunately, you just chose not to say anything.
Yeah.
And so that is why it's so important and not everyone wants to hear this, but that is why it's so important for we as women, because I put it on us, we're women Austria. We have to take some accountability for our role in relationships and how they function. We are part of the relationship as well. We
And
have to
also like
take
see us as like equals instead of like them being higher, or they are always like you always have to put them first.
and I don't even know what that looks like in my world. I hear people say I hear people say it, Austria. I don't know what it looks like. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I needed to probably cancel these things out. They're popping up on my screen. I don't know what that looks like in my world. You know what? I'm gonna close out all these screens, Austria. I'm sorry. I'm gonna keep talking, but I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know
fine.
I don't know what that looks like in my world, Austria, because I am all for, yes, we are absolute equals. We are absolute equals. We, we talk about, for example, the 80-20 rule or whatever. You find 80% in one person, or you find 80%, for example, of what you're looking for in someone. Well, if you find 80% of what you're looking for in someone, that is freaking awesome. Okay. You don't go somewhere else looking for the 20.
Yeah, and I think like even the last 20% that might be them willing to put in work to kind of become the person that you might want, because they would be willing to improve for the relationship.
Absolutely. And with the right person, absolutely. They would want to improve. Yes.
And you have
Because
to
20
be willing to do the same for the other person as well.
be willing to do the same. I totally agree. And so when I hear people say things like, well, in a relationship, it's 50-50. No, it's not. It should be 100-100. Like you should bring your A game, expecting that person to bring his or her A game as well. You
Yeah.
know, that should be the intention. You bring all of who you are, all your goodness. That person sees your flaws. He or she understands your flaws. You both are conscious of what you need to work on, and you agree that you're going to make your relationship work. So you're gonna be ever so mindful of improving who you are. Because
Yeah.
it's building the relationship, it's making it stronger, it's creating a deeper connection, and that is what you're ultimately wanting and needing to do and able to sustain it.
And
That
actually,
it's
what like one thing that came in my mind, I think I heard it somewhere, or I was thinking about it on a walk, like I think last year, is that it's not that you get in a relationship with one person, because then within few years that person, as long as they keep working on themselves, they'll be a different person. You're not going to
absolutely
be with one person for the rest of your life. You will be with one person but different versions, or different like levels of development of them, because as long as they keep working on themselves, they might be different person within 6 months. So like
Absolutely.
it's not that you get in relationship with one person, it's the same person for the rest of your life. They are going to change as well.
Yes, I love that. I love that. It is so true. And that's why it's so important to just keep working on becoming a better version of ourselves, improving those things that we know need improvement. Like we all can think about things that we want to improve
Oh
about
yeah.
ourselves, right? But we have to be conscious about them. We have to be honest
Yeah.
about them, and we have to have the right mindset, and take action to make sure that we are working to improve those things about ourselves. You can't expect your partner to become this person that you're not even willing to become.
Yeah.
Like you want your man to be this rock star in everything, and he has to know how to do everything around the house, and he has to this and he needs to do that. And okay, and what are you expecting and needing you to do, to
Yeah.
make sure that you guys are in fact equals, because then when you're not discussing those expectations, when you're not talking about, how you two can make each other better versions of yourselves, and working together to make sure that the relationship can improve, that it can be a healthy one. When you're not doing that, you're not keeping it real in terms of what your expectations are. And that's why communicating expectations are so important.
Okay.
Communicating
So can you
expectations
talk
are.
about expectations, because I think that is really important topic. And like I think expectations also might come in with the trust. So like
Yeah.
maybe you can touch a bit on like expectations, because that's a topic that like I'm really interested in.
And as it relates to expectations, we all come with our very own expectations, right? We expect this person to do that. We expect him to do this. Um, and one of the biggest issues with expectations is the fact that we're not always communicating them.
I
We have
was
them in our
expecting
mind.
this.
We have them in our mind, and you said it earlier. Our partners are not mind readers. We
Yeah.
are not mind readers. Our partners are not mind readers. But when we don't communicate our expectations, obviously, when they're not met, naturally they lead to disappointments in a huge way. Now, is everyone conscious of how to communicate their expectations? Do they even know what they want? They may have an idea, and one of the biggest things would be, are your expectations realistic?
Yeah.
Are your expectations realistic? But that's why it's so important to have someone that has the same values as you are, because your expectations will be more than likely on the same level. They will be reasonable. You think about, for example, we talk about expectations. When you start dating someone, you should talk about what does it look like in terms of the time that you spend together. Are you expecting to see him every weekend? He may not be expecting that. He may be expecting to see you once every 2 weekends. You may want to see him 3 days out of the week. He may want to see you one day out of the week. So it's important to talk about that, for example.
And
How
also
much
like what kind of how you want to spend time. Is it quality or is it quantity? Because
correct.
sometimes it doesn't have to be like the whole weekend to have like quality time with that person.
Exactly. Exactly. That is so true. Are you going to expect that he's texting you every day? If he doesn't text you one day, are you going to fly into a fit? Are you going to be furious? you know, talk
Especially if
about
you
that.
don't know the reason why he's not texting. Maybe he's like really busy at work. So
Exactly. You're on the other end. You're on the other end of the phone, stewing that he had the audacity to not text you at all. Yes. when, when his obligations, for example, at work, did not
yeah, and then
allow.
you come up with all the stories why he's doing this, or like come up with all the negatives. and then he might just respond you that he had an emergency. So it's like,
Correct. Then you feel bad. Then you
yeah.
feel bad. You feel bad. You probably even have you feel bad, Astra. You probably even have to confess that you were over here suing, and now you have to confess. Confession is good for the soul. I really believe that. Then you have to now confess that, well, I apologize, but I was really over here thinking the worst. I was calling you this. I was calling you all these names. Oh my goodness. Yes. It's just talking about those expectations. And once again, not being afraid to talk about those expectations. With the right man, with the right partner, Astra, you will be comfortable to talk about everything and anything. And that's why I tell women it's so important to be able to communicate everything and anything, whether it's the good or bad. Like you
Yeah.
shouldn't just be keen to talk about, well, let's talk about our future together and let's talk about our vacation next month. Well, you need to be just as keen, in talking about, well, there's the issue of that you weren't cleaning up in the kitchen when you were done. And I thought we agreed,
Yeah.
however you bring the issue up to be addressed. But you have to talk about the good and the bad. It can't just be you're all on board to talk about, well, yes, we're going on vacation next month. We have to
I
do
think that's
this,
the way
that.
people assume relationships are just like fairy tale, where it's
I
like
know.
everything is perfect, no arguments, and
I know. And no arguments don't mean that there's not conflict. It means that they're not addressing the arguments. So yes, if you hear someone say that there's no conflict in their relationship, that's an issue.
yeah. Yeah,
That
because
is
I
so
think
not.
like you can have like conflict but not argue about it, but actually just sit down and have conversation about it. So I think it's not
Yeah.
about finding somebody, like even the fact that people are like, "Oh, I want somebody who is like me." Like, do you? Like, do you really want to have somebody who's like exactly like you are? Like, are you really sure that's what you want?
Yeah.
And like many times people are like, "Well, actually no." You already
Yeah.
have you. You don't need another you.
Correct. Yes. I mean, it's not wanting or needing to have someone exactly like you, because when people talk about opposites attract, like that's a whole other thing. The opposites attract would only last for a certain period of time. You need to have a lot of commonality. It's just you
Yeah.
need to have, like I said, some similar key life values.
Yeah,
But
like
no,
the
you don't.
fundamentals you want to be like
Correct.
what you agree on.
Yes. But you don't want someone exactly like you, because then when you don't have someone who's exactly like you, you're able to provide that balance for each
Yeah.
other. And that balance is key. It's very important. You know what he may lack some strength in, you make up for that. What you lack strength in, he makes up for that.
Yeah.
And that's why the teamwork and being together and, being ever so mindful of why working together is so important is key, because you
Yeah.
balance each other. You balance each other. Yes.
I wanted to go back a little on the expectations. Because I think many times, probably mostly females, when you try to communicate your expectations, I think many times females might feel needy or like, oh, I'm being too demanding. Like how can someone communicate their expectations without feeling like guilty or that they're being too needy and stuff like that, because it is important to communicate them, but like feel kind of secure and sure when you are saying them, rather than, okay, I'm gonna slip it this time because like I already talked about the last thing like few days ago.
Well, it's if that person is a needy or clingy person, their expectations are going to come across needy or clingy, and there's nothing that can help them
Oh, so
unless
what's
they
what's the
actually
difference? How can
help.
you know if they are being needy or they are not being needy? Like how you distinguish them?
Well, a needy or clingy person is definitely going to come across as, well, I feel that we should spend 3 nights together because I work on Fridays. This is just an example. So I think that we should spend Monday through Thursday together, because then Friday I work all day, and then Saturday I have to visit my parents. You're actually giving that person what you think is a fair expectation of your relationship and what you expect.
But you
as
really think
opposed
about yourself.
but you're absolutely thinking about yourself. Exactly. You know, and so if you are being genuine, not the needy, clingy type, if you're being genuine, it's not going to come across, of course, as being needy or clingy. But yes, if you're a clingy person, it's going to be all about you because you're going to be thinking me, and it's going to come across that way. And
And
that is
like you want
definitely,
them around you all the time, you want them to do something for you. And if
yeah,
they, I think like a lot of times being needy might come with not being self confident, because then you feel like you need them all the time to feel maybe good about yourself.
and that's why that self-confidence and self-esteem is so key to work on yourself before you get into that relationship, preferably before you get into that relationship, because you're
Yeah.
so right. You're absolutely right. You don't want to come across needy and clingy. You know, I tell women that is so unattractive.
Oh, yeah.
That is so unattractive. You're better than that. That is so unattractive. You know, you don't want a man who is totally feeding off your desperation for him, because then you're willing to put up with so much of his crap. You're willing to stay there while he treats you bad, while he talks to you however he wants to, while
And also,
he
he doesn't have to worry as much about his behavior, because like he
he
doesn't,
doesn't.
he's like, oh, yeah, like you need me. Like,
Correct. He knows that you're going to take him back. He could ghost you for 5, 10 days. He's gonna come back and you may fuss a little, but it's going to go back to normal. And then you're creating this pattern. You know,
yeah.
you are telling him that that is okay. In your world it's not okay, but you're literally, your actions are telling him that it's okay. So it's going to be a recurring pattern. And that is why I said that, not everyone wants to hear it, but women need to take accountability for their role in relationships,
Yeah.
because you can control what happens with you. You can control what happens with you. You can't control what that person does, but you can control what happens with you.
Yeah.
And so 5, 10, 15 years down the line, if the relationship is still the same, well, you can't totally blame him. You absolutely can't totally blame him. You would
Yeah.
have
And
to.
blaming him is not going to help as well.
It's not going to help. This is 15 years down the line where you've allowed this. This has continued. You stayed in the relationship. You've told them each time without literally or verbally telling him, but your actions have showed him that it's okay and you're going to stay. And it doesn't matter what he puts you through. You
Yeah, and I
know,
think it's also that fact that people will treat you the way you will allow them to treat you. So it's also your responsibility, whatever he did or whatever you blame him for, you allowed him to do that.
you absolutely allowed it. I love Tony Gaskin's quote, Astra. It says, you teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you reinforce. And so, hence, as women, we have to take some responsibility for our role in relationships because, yes, we absolutely teach people how to treat us. We do.
Yeah.
It is very important. So, you know what? So, back to your question about the expectations and, coming across needy. um like, you have to, first of all, you have to be a realistic person. If you're needy and clingy, unfortunately it's going to come across that way and it's going to be a total turn off. But
Yeah.
if you're genuine, if you and that person values are aligned and you're being your authentic self, you're being genuine, you are being reasonable, even if your expectations may not be what he initially was, you know, um, thinking that you would say or propose, you know what? You probably can meet in the middle somewhere because it would have been something, it would have been a reasonable expectation. It's like, or even asking it in a question, what do you think about,
I think like good
um,
terminology is using a ping pong, when it's like you just ping pong each other. You're like,
yeah,
oh, I want this. And they're like, no, I want this. And then you're like, okay, can I ask this much? And they're like, oh, you could get this much. So you just
yeah,
keep doing the ping pong until you find that like what what is the best for both of you, rather than
Correct. Yeah.
you just throw the balls at them and
Yeah,
expect something
maybe
in
ask
return.
a question. Well, what do you think about us spending XYZ time? And you think about, like, for example, holidays and stuff. You have to talk about these things. It's like, okay, the holidays are coming around. You might be expecting him to spend holidays with you. He's definitely possibly thinking he's going to spend the holidays with his family. That's why, as women, we need to talk about these things too. And that's another level of expectations, when it comes to the time that you spend with each other and what to expect in your relationship. That's why these conversations are so important. And a lot of people don't have them.
Yeah.
We've all been there, guilty as charged. We've all been there, but what I say is, when you know better, you do better. And when you want things to be different, you have to do things differently. What do they say? You can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
It is called insanity.
Yeah. Or
It's called
stupidity.
insanity.
It
I didn't want to be that harsh, but yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
think even with I wanted to switch it up a little, going to maybe a bit. Oh no, wait. First, when it comes, if you're somebody who knows that you're needy, I think you just have to make sure you have enough going on in your own life, where like he's not the your life, that like
Correct.
everything in your life is around him and his needs and wants. You actually have enough life going on yourself, where you don't, it's not like your main, not in a way that it's not, the relationship is not your priority, but like it's not all your life, that you actually have something else going on.
Yep. No, I love that. Yes, he definitely can't be your focal point. Your relationship can be an important part of your life, but it should not be your entire life.
Yeah.
you know um we all need a support system. So having people in your life who, your family or friends who you can spend time with when you are away from him. You don't feel the need to always have to spend time with him because he is the center of your world. And unfortunately, when people do that, or make that person the center of their world, then when the relationship ends, they crumble.
Yeah.
They totally lose themselves. And it's very heartbreaking because I've seen it. It is
Yeah.
very heartbreaking. You have to surround yourself with what I call a good support system. So you do have friends, you do have family that you can spend time with. You find a hobby, take up a hobby, find something that, even if you're not entirely good at, something that you've always wanted to do, something you're passionate about doing.
Yeah.
Probably start reading more. you know it's called self growth, personal development. you know Find something that you can occupy your time doing, that gets your mind away from him being the focal point,
Yeah.
and that you're not together. you know um like I said, find a hobby,
And I think
start a
also
new
like one thing
project.
is that I think many times people are like, oh, so now I'm gonna work until I get in a relationship, and once I get this guy, that's when I can stop working on myself. Like that's it, I'm done.
So not true. So not true. So that is absolutely not the right mindset. Nope. And I bet people do that. Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's even important to actually find somebody who will encourage you to actually work more on yourself. Not in a way that
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I'm not happy with this and that,
Yeah.
but they actually push you to get better. And there's a big difference, because it's not about, oh, you have to get to this level to like, for me to be happy with you, but it's like, I'm happy with where you are, but I know you can more. And
Yeah.
in a way, like, I expect you to get better for our own good, not just like, not even for me, it's more for you. So it's
Yeah.
more like being selfless in that way, where they want you to get better.
Yes. I love that. I love that because, when you are with the right person, yes, that person does absolutely add so much value to who you are. They add value to who you are because they do help you envision, um, what you may have probably had in the back of your mind. You may have seen it, just on a small spectrum. They can help you envision it probably on a whole different level, you know, help you actually realize, and live those dreams, those goals, those aspirations. The right person will absolutely push you to be a better person. I totally agree with that. And that is who you want in your life. Someone who they're not trying to get you to be another person that you're not. They're trying to add to who you already are, and they see the potential. They know that you could be so much more. And you may have been, just operating on this cool and calm level of, well, I know I'm good at what I do,
Yeah,
but
being
really you're
comfortable.
a badass. Okay, you're a badass, and this is who you could be, and this person has now made you realize that, you
Yeah.
know and that's why it's so important to have the right person in your life. It is so
And I think
important.
it's also important to understand that um, that the fact that they make you feel uncomfortable, it's actually in a way needed. Like, because when it comes to self-development, you will never feel like really comfortable. Like it's well, you will never feel comfortable to start with. Like it's not something that's why nobody really wants to do it, or most of the people don't want to do it.
Yes,
But like
they don't want to get out of their
yeah,
comfort zone. They
and like the fact
don't want.
that your partner might make you feel uncomfortable when it comes to self-development, it doesn't mean that they do it to like hurt you or they want bad for you. They actually want the best for you. Because
Want
otherwise,
the
like
best.
it is, I think it's like even when I work with my clients, it's not pleasant to tell them things that I need to hear. It's not something that I'm
Yeah,
like, yay, now I'm gonna crush your ego and like trigger
that,
you and things
that's
like
not
that.
the
It's not
goal.
pleasant. But like you need
Correct.
people that are, and like your partner, they're gonna see you and know you the best. They will be like the
Yes,
closest person, ideally, if you're in a good relationship, um, rather than
absolutely.
try to hide something from them. But like
Absolutely.
assuming that you have good relationship, like they will know you the best. So you want to have somebody who you can trust to like push you and even like trigger you, but not in a way when they do it against you, but they do it actually to help you.
Correct, because it's having that person who has your back, who's supportive. You want someone who's supportive. You hear people talk about that their other half doesn't give a rat's butt about their job or anything that they do. And so that causes resentment. But you want someone
I think
who.
it depends maybe to what level, because like you can't expect, let's say if you're artist and they're like businessmen, you can't expect them to be like, so what kind of art you do, or like that
Yes,
kind of detail.
and that's the thing. Yes, and that's the thing. They don't necessarily have to be all super excited about your work, but at the same time, they're not bashing what you do.
Yeah.
They're supportive in the sense of they understand that um, they are not totally as bubbly and vibrant about that particular about that particular type of work, but they respect that you do it. They understand
Yeah.
that their goal, their main goal is to be supportive in any way that they can. And
Yeah.
you talk about what that support looks like. It's not um it's not so much them totally being overly excited about it just because you're in a relationship, but
Yeah.
more so
Yeah, because I
understanding
think
that.
even then, like that will feel fake.
Yeah,
Because like you
correct.
can,
It will
yeah,
not come across genuine. It will not be genuine. It will not come across genuine. They could probably just ask, well, how was your day? How did the art expo go? How did the there was a
but I
gallery
think
opening
also
to.
there has to be distinguish. You have to distinguish like um you talking about what you do from gossiping.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. But you just want someone who can absolutely support what you do. They may not
Yeah.
totally be excited about it, but yes, just be supportive in whatever way he or she can.
Yeah.
It's just and that's what's important, just being supportive. Have someone who is supportive of you and your
Yeah.
goals, your aspirations, things that are important to you. That person understands that these things are important to you, and he or she's supportive of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you like a while ago already. But about, so let's say, how, like, have you worked with some female that are like really independent, that like once they get in a relationship they're being like really independent? Because I myself, I'm really independent person, and I have had conversations with other females that are like independent. So like, and like in a way it is different when you get in a relationship when you are used to being by yourself or you're like really independent, and how maybe to change, have that like transition towards a relationship where it's more like healthy, or it doesn't like damage the relationship or maybe hurt the other person, where like many times when you are independent you don't really feel the need to have somebody always there. You're like you're good by yourself, like you're confident being by yourself, so you don't always like need them. And how to maybe make it, like how would, and I assume you probably have had a few people that you have worked with that are like independent the way they are. So maybe like what would be a healthy way to like start relationship when you're like an independent person?
Most of the women that I've worked with have not been independent to the extent that you're talking about.
Okay.
I'm one of those persons. So I'm one of those independent persons, Astra. I'm like you
Okay.
know. But what is important to remember with having that sense of independence, because that is me, that is me all day, every day. What is important is not letting that sense of independence create an issue. Meaning, I say that meaning you don't literally verbalize, well, I don't really need you. You don't literally verbalize that to that
Yeah.
person. You're feeling that way, and it's only normal that you feel that way because you know you don't need that person. But more importantly, you don't verbalize it, so you don't want to offend them. You don't want to offend them. They understand and they recognize that you are important. I'm sorry, that you are independent.
I
That
think
you
even like, even if you communicate it, if it's the right person, they will understand, because you can say like,
correct.
I don't need you, but I choose to spend time with you
Yes,
and be with you. So that's
correct.
actually like, that's like a compliment even.
Correct. And see, that's the thing. That's what I was just about to say, that the right person will feel even more appreciated, that you don't need them, but that you genuinely want them in
Yeah.
your life. That you genuinely want to spend time with them. That spending time with them and being with them is important. And I'm just gonna talk about from a perspective of a woman. Men are totally attracted, the right man, the right man is totally attracted to an independent woman because first and foremost, she doesn't need him.
Yeah.
And trust me, men, the right men want to feel wanted, not absolutely needed. They like to feel needed too, yes. It strokes their ego, but
Yeah.
they appreciate being wanted more because it means more to them. It means more to them. And so when I say don't actually verbalize it, yes, like you said, you don't want it to come across to where you're saying it in such a negative way. Once again, it's all about what you say. I'm sorry, it's not about what you say, it's how you say
Yeah.
it. So once you can actually communicate and express to him that you are you are so appreciative of who he is as a person, that you want him in your life, that you appreciate having him in your life, that you know and he knows and understands that what you're literally saying is that you don't need him. He's going to find that even more attractive. The right man, let's say that. Let's
Yeah.
make sure, clarify
Yeah.
that.
We just assume that we're talking about the right man.
Yes, the right man. Because we know honestly, Austria, that there's some men that thrive on women needing them.
Yeah,
There are
well, I
men that
think it's that's what you said about stroking their ego, because the right man, they don't need their egos being stroked, because they are
absolutely,
working on themselves. So they don't need you to like approve them all the time, because they have done that work for themselves.
exactly, exactly. So when we talk about independent women and how they can actually approach the dating scene, um, it is being, I think, the first thing is being self-aware, right? That self-awareness of that you do have that independence. You do have that, I can do this all by myself. I
Yeah.
don't need this person. I don't need that person. I can attest because, like I said, I am that person. But you are aware of how you're aware of your attitude when when it comes across to the other person. When you say things, you're aware of your attitude about how you say it, your tone definitely. The timing of when you do
And it
actually
also
say
might be that like you, what is it, the reason why you're telling it? Maybe you're just trying to prove something that actually I can
correct.
be by myself. Like I don't need you.
Correct.
Well,
Yes.
well
The
then why you
timing of
talk to me?
yes. The timing of when you say something, like if depending on the situation, yeah, you may not have necessarily needed to say it at that time, because then because you said it at that particular time, it comes across now where he's offended, but it's being self-aware of it's having self-awareness, let me put it that way. It's having self-awareness, and of course it would probably be such a work in progress, like we're all a work in progress, right?
Yeah.
But it would probably be even more so of a constant work in progress to maintain that self-awareness of, okay, that is what I know I need to work on. Make sure I'm not coming across as I'm this totally independent person that, well, I know that I am, but I don't want to offend him in the process.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that everybody else has to know it.
Correct. Correct. Like you are who you are, right?
Yeah.
You are who you are.
And I think like they can sense it as well. Or even
And they
like
can
if,
absolutely sense it.
yeah, if they get offended, I don't think that they are the right person to start with, because they shouldn't be in a
Absolutely.
place where you say that, like, it's like, oh well, so you don't need me. Well, that's pretty much like that. That is not the right guy for you. Like if you need somebody who needs you to need him, like that's not even, I think that is not even healthy, that kind of relationship where it's
It's
like
not,
based on the neediness.
it's not, and that's why it's so important to have the right person and know who he is, and be conscious of who he is, and when he is the right person, like you said, he'll understand your independence. He'll understand that you are that he should feel so honored that you want him in your presence, because you absolutely don't need him, but that you want him in your presence. You want to spend time with him. You want to have a relationship with him, knowing that you don't need him. That that totally gives him a whole new perspective on the way that he views you. It can only totally um add to the sense of his attraction to you, his feeling even more connected to you, because you are not, once again, you are not that clingy, needy person where, if you're not together for
And I
one
think it's
day,
also important that they understand like you're not easy to get, because like you know what you want, you have standards. So in a way, once they
totally.
get in relationship with you, it's like they feel more like, not like rewarded, but it feels more like meaningful maybe.
It does feel meaningful, and they don't, and like you touch on, that you're not easy to get. Once they do get in a relationship with you, they don't stop pursuing you, because it doesn't stop then,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't stop then. You don't get into a
And it goes the
relationship.
other way around as well.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a
Don't
two-way
just
street.
expect them to run after you and then you just treat them the way you want to treat
Correct.
them.
It's a
Like,
two-way street.
don't
Thanks
get
for
arrogant.
clarifying. Thanks for clarifying that, because I should have clarified that it is a two-way street. You give what you want. Yes. If you want to feel loved, then you show more love. Then you show more love. If you want to be understood, then you should be more understanding. Give what you want to receive. It is a two-way street. Yes. You can't have a relationship. Well, you can have a relationship with yourself, because you always have a relationship with yourself, because that is the best relationship you can have. Because who do you have for the rest of your life? Yourself,
Yeah.
right? But when you're in a relationship with someone else, it is a two-way street. You have to give and
Yeah.
take. It's a
Yeah.
give
And I
and
think it's important to understand it, especially when you're somebody who is I think many times, not to offend anybody, but like many females expect guys to run after them. But like they
They
run after
do?
you, then you many guys do. And also like I think probably the right person is not going to run after you forever.
No.
Like they'll be like, okay, so if you expect me now to run after you or try to please you all the time and do whatever you want, like you're not the person for me. I'm not
Yeah.
going to be treated this way.
No, because that's the right man, like he says, he doesn't find that attractive. He really doesn't. You know, playing hard to get for a year. No, it's not
Well,
playing hard to get
people
for a
do
year.
that.
Okay, so maybe they don't do it for a year, but playing hard to get for 6 months. No, no, that was back in high school.
Yeah, well, that is
Okay,
just
that
you
was
playing games and pretty much
that's
like
correct.
wasting their
That
time.
that is back in high school. That was back in when you were in your early 20s where you didn't know better and you were playing games. Exactly. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's not attractive. And the right man is not going to be running after you while you play these petty mind games for 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, it's no, he's not attractive. He's not attracted to that. And so for women who think that that is something that they need to do, then they'll find themselves single more longer than they really want to,
Yeah.
you know, or if they're not single, they're in a relationship with the wrong man because the wrong one will probably continue pursuing the chasing after you for 6 months to a year. But once you do decide that you're going to give him a chance, oh, trust me, may as well you hadn't wasted your time because he's not the right one. Yes. So the wrong man, yes, may continue the chasing, but it's a game that I'm sorry, the right man would not play.
How
It's
to
yeah.
how to get what you said just now. I was thinking about how you get when well how you know when to get out of a relationship because I I was watching some of Steve Harvey's videos when he said that many times what happens is that you believe that oh I have been with this person so long, now if I get out it has been waste of time, but at the same time like if you don't get out you keep being in this like toxic unhealthy relationship. So maybe like how can you know when to get out, or maybe what are some like red flags or whatever that, or how you know like okay this is like long enough, they are not going to change, nothing, this is going to be the same unless I get out. So like how you know when to get out.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you touched on that because one of the quotes that I use, my very own quote that I use to try to get women to just kind of see, get a bird's eye view of what their relationship and their life is like because it's hard to see the picture when you're inside the frame. So
Yeah.
my quote that I like to use is thinking that you should stay in a toxic relationship because you've already invested a lot of your time, okay, is equivalent to saying that you'll continue drinking poison simply because you're thirsty. So if you're able to grasp, right, the magnitude of what that honestly means and looks like, then you're able to understand why it doesn't make sense staying. And you talk about toxicity, and there's so many levels of it, right? It could start with mind games, someone making you feel guilty about doing or not doing something, and you end up doing or not doing it because, for example, he plays the blame game. Well, your mom was really upset that you didn't that we didn't go to her house for dinner, or that we're not going to her house for dinner because you don't want to go. And so now have he has already he has already planted the guilty seed in your head. So now you've totally taken
And
that
like you're the bad
and
one.
correct. Now you've decided, okay, well, we're going to go, knowing whatever reasoning you had for not wanting to go. Okay, you've totally now flipped that because he made you feel guilty. So it could start with simple mind games like that. Definitely when there is the verbal abuse, it starts with mental, emotional, verbal abuse, the name calling. There are too many women who
Even if it's like a joke.
C-
Unless it's like
There,
some kind of inside
there.
joke that
You
you
know
both
what?
can like laugh about, it's different. But if it's like a joke when they're like, "Oh, I'm just joking," well, are you?
Yeah, well, you know what, Austria, I could tell you if there is name calling, it is not a joke for me. It is
Well,
not
yeah,
a joke for
it
me
is not a
because
joke for
I,
you, but like the other person might communicate it as like, "Oh, I'm just joking."
and see that's the thing because that's the thing because then people may pacify it. People pacify it. Oh well, it was a joke, or and you can't even take a joke. All of that is toxicity. You can't even take a joke. I was only joking, and like you can just imagine how
Yeah, yeah.
that conversation goes. But even when there's a name calling, that person gets upset, he starts calling name he starts calling you names, then the verbal abuse, the mental or emotional abuse, then it spills over into the physical abuse. He pushes you that one time.
Especially if you allow them to keep
Correct.
doing it.
Correct. He pushes you that one time. um but you don't think that's an issue because it was just a push. He didn't punch you, so you don't think that it's the same level of abuse. you know um those are signs. Just totally disrespecting you in terms of course the name calling, but also not valuing your opinions, your thoughts, your ideas. When you express them, they
Or your
totally,
time.
they correct, or either your time. You express you're concerned about something, it gets shut down. He doesn't want to hear it. You're not making any sense to him. All of those things are red flags. um you know um of
Maybe also
course.
like looking down on you when it's like, well,
Oh,
you don't know anything, or stuff like
correct.
that.
Correct. And that's why I just said too, yes, not valuing your opinion, thinking that what you're saying doesn't even make sense, that
Yeah.
you're useless and you don't know anything. You don't, your ideas don't amount to anything,
Yeah, and
or
I think
even
like you might be useless in some areas, but it doesn't mean that you're not like, let's say if it's like a household where the husband is working and the wife is at home, like you might not be able to help with like his business, but at the same time, like it doesn't mean that you are not adding anything to relationship.
correct. You're running the household.
Yeah.
You're running the
Which is
household.
not
That
an
is
easy
your
thing to do.
correct. That is your contribution, and that is substantial. Even the way he communicates to you, not even just that, the name calling, which is obviously toxic. The way he communicates with you, is he talking at you instead of to you? Is he actually talking at you? And that's like um, in line with what you said about belittling you or berating you. Is he talking at you? Just those little things are early
Yeah.
signs, early red flags, because then they escalate into way bigger things. Like you touched on, if he's not respectful of your time, you guys are supposed to go out, he's going to pick you up at 8, he doesn't call, he doesn't show up, he conveniently comes at 9:30, no excuse. And you better not ask him anything because he's going to fly into a rage. Just things like that. They're red flags.
What
And
would
as
you
women,
say if somebody told you like, yeah, but like what if he changes? Like I know he can change. Like I just want to stay longer in relationship because I know that he can change. He even told me he's going to work on himself, but like nothing changes. It's just words. So like how would you help those people? Because I think like you're in this belief that I really believe he can change and like, but it doesn't mean that he's going to change.
well, when you do see those red flags, Austria, what I say is you don't date what you think is potential, because the potential for growth is a whole different thing. The potential to change from toxicity is not your concern. It is not your job. It is not your responsibility to wait around to see if he changes that type of behavior. It is not your responsibility to try to help him change that behavior. You have to recognize that you didn't sign up for that you don't deserve that you deserve so much better than that you know your worth, that you're not going to stay in that type of relationship because that is not who you are. It's going to be a waste of your time. Like, you have to decide all of this. It can't be that you are in your mind, you're thinking that, well, he could actually change. Like you said, what if that person is thinking that? No, you can't assume, you can't hope. I
Yeah.
mean, you can hope, but that means nothing. Like, when you see those type of red flags, when you see that toxic behavior, and like I said, there's so many levels of toxicity, but when you see just those little ones that people gloss over, that people pacify because they don't think that it's serious. Like, when it starts with like something as a simple, and it's not simple by any means, but what they consider, well, he only pushed me, he only pushed me a little, I got too close to him, and he only pushed me a little, and don't think that that's an issue that he even put his hands on
Yeah, well, I
her.
think the challenge, and I have seen it with different people that I'm like, well, this is not relationship for you. It's like when you are in that relationship, you are so attached to that person and you so believe in them that they can change, that I think it's for people in that situation, it's hard for them to see from the outside. And even if they have somebody from the outside telling them, like, even if you as an expert would go to them, they would be like, yeah, but they still can change. It's like, well, they can change, but it's not, doesn't mean that they're going to change for you or at
Correct.
this moment, or maybe within next like 20 years. You can't know how long, if ever, how long it's going to take them for them to actually like want to change.
And see, that's the thing, like and that's why it's so important to have that sense of value, to have that sense of, self-confidence and self-esteem, because when you do, that is all that it takes, Austria, for you to get into that mindset of, when you actually do see those red flags early on, that no, you're not waiting for what may be, that you're
Yeah.
getting out of dodge, that you have already seen that this could end badly, that you're not going to waste your time to see what's going to happen next. You're not going to give him the opportunity to do
Yeah, but
anything
like, what
more.
if I don't want to? Not me, but like in general. What if I don't want to now like waste time looking for the next relationship?
And you know what, and that is why I use that quote, because there are a lot of women who do stay in relationships because they're afraid of the unknown. They're
Yeah,
afraid of the
and
unknown.
it's also
They're
more comfortable, even if it's not the right
correct.
relationship.
Yeah, their logic is, well, I already know this person. Their logic, or lack thereof, unfortunately, is that they already know this person. They don't want to get to know someone new again. They don't want to go through the process of looking for someone new. Who am I going to find? Where am I going to find him? How long is it going to take before I find him? Like, all of these things
Yeah,
play over in their mind. And so in their mind, in their world, it seems more reasonable to stay where they are
and
because they already
easier.
have someone. It's easier. Once again, once things are uncomfortable, like we talked about earlier, if there's some uncomfortability,
Yeah.
people don't want to go that route. They like what's easy. And of course, being in a toxic relationship, there's nothing easy about that. But they're actually in a relationship. They have someone there. They're afraid of the unknown,
Yeah.
and it's very heartbreaking because I see it a lot. Um, and what I
I
hear
see it
is
a lot,
that,
and I don't even work with people with like
I know,
relationships, like
I know.
relationship wise. So it's a lot going on, and like that's why I asked you this question, because I think it's like one thing is that I think it's easier to find relationship, whether healthy or not. You find
Correct.
relationship, you get in relationship, but then like
Yes.
getting out, you have had this time where you get attached and you get used to it, and it starts to get like it's easier to stay with them than like go out by yourself, try to find somebody else or be by yourself. So it's more convenient even if it's not as good for you. And I think it's harder to get out because then you are kind of used to things and you feel like, oh, I'm not alone anymore, even though you might even feel like you're alone in relationship, but it's something that you're like, yeah, but I'm still not alone.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to work on who you are. That's why it's so important to work on who you are, because that's the only way that you can even begin to start the process of of knowing, realizing, understanding that you need to get out. Like it all, when I tell you that the fact that we know this, but I don't think many people realize the magnitude of what it means. Your mind is the most powerful tool. Your
Yeah.
mind. You know, whatever you tell yourself, you believe it. Whatever you tell yourself, you believe it. And so it's so important to have that, like I said, I mean, I will keep saying it, having that self-confidence, having that self-esteem. Now, obviously there are people who lack that self-confidence and self-esteem, but this is why you need to work on that. You
And
need to
not try to find somebody that will make you feel good.
correct. Correct. And understanding you are responsible for your own happiness. You
Yeah.
are responsible for your own happiness. And so I
It's actually a
totally,
really important point.
it really is. It really is. I mean, I get it, but I don't get it at the same time. Like I get it when I say I get it, but don't get it. I get it because I empathize, but I don't get it because I don't know what that looks like in my world. So I get it, but I don't get it when people um, don't realize, that staying in a toxic relationship is having so much more of a worse impact on them than if they were single and didn't have anyone.
I think it might be because that's all they know. That kind of treatment, that kind of relationship, that's
I
all
know.
they know. So they are like, well, but that's the way relationships are.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? That's one of those what I call self-sabotaging beliefs. Like you've seen this with probably a family member, your parents. This is what you're used to. What I say to that is that we've all grown up in different environments. Like I could talk about me personally. I grew up in an abusive home. It was not my dad was abusive. My mom was the abusive one. So I know
Yeah.
what being an abusive household looks like. But what I know is once I became an adult, I knew right from wrong. And I knew I did not want that in my home, in my relationship, in my environment. And Austria, we always have a
And like
choice.
maybe did you when you were in relationships, did you notice that you were kind of recreating those patterns?
Oh, I was very conscious of not recreating those
Okay.
patterns.
So
I
like in
was
your
very,
case, you were actually aware. So I think
I was
like that's the important thing that you're aware
correct.
and that's when you can change it.
Correct. It is self-awareness. I was very conscious of it first, even before relationships. I could tell you, I was conscious of it as it relates to my kids because I made the decision. I always believe we have a choice. I believe God creates these paths for us in our lives, and we decide which path to go. We decide which route to take. Now, do we always choose the right paths? Definitely not. You know, but I made that conscious decision first as it relates to my kids. Like I knew I was not going to treat my kids the way that my mom treated us. So that was my first sense of self-awareness. And then it spilled over into my relationships. Like I knew that I wasn't going to let anyone treat me the way my mom treated my dad and us. So we all got the same type of treatment. So I know what it is like to be in that type of abusive relationship. So it's so heartbreaking when people stay in that same what I call toxic dating cycle, that toxic relationship cycle. And then it's all about that is all they know. It is very heartbreaking,
Yeah, and
because
also
we
like
all
I
have
think
a
people
choice.
have to realize that the only constant thing in those cycles is you.
Correct. You're the common denominator. Yes. And what I tell people is that you are not, your job is not to try to change that person. You can only control what happens with you. And if it means taking yourself out of the equation, then that is what you have to do at times.
Yeah.
Like before I was a coach, I went through a divorce. Like I could speak about relationship woes. I am not, I tell people I'm not exempt from any of that.
At
I
what
went through
point
a
did you know
divorce.
that you want to get divorced?
I think it's safe to say we all have stayed in relationships longer than we should have,
Yeah.
because I was no different. I was no different. It got to where nothing was changing. He was he was a cheater, and that's who he was. And he's still a cheater. He's
Yeah.
still a cheater. We have a really good friendship now, um, but that's because we're not intertwined in that intimate way anymore. But it got to where I decided this is not what I signed up for. I've had enough of this. I am ready to move forward by myself. It doesn't matter how long I have to stay by myself. I was so focused on my kids. That was what mattered to me.
Did you have like a
Getting out of that.
moment when you realized it, or like when you were like, okay, this is it, like enough?
Oh, yes. Yes. There was the moment when, I mean, I had realized it a while back.
Yeah.
Like, I was married for almost 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had realized it a while back, but um, we worked on certain things, or we try to work on certain things, but then there would be another issue. It would happen again. The cheating would
Yeah.
start again. He was just a cheater. There wasn't anything that was going to change that. He was a cheater. And so, yeah, I just got to the point where I had enough. I just got to the point where I had enough. And once again, that's where I got that mindset. And when I tell you, Oscar, that we all have that God-given inner strength in us,
Yeah, I was
okay?
about to
That
say, like, it takes a lot of courage to actually take that step,
it
especially if you
does.
have built up pretty much like your whole life together with that
It
person.
does. It does. We all have that God-given inner strength in us, though. And we have to dive deep and find it and bring it out and utilize it when we need to. And that is what I did. That is what got me through my divorce. I was so focused on my kids, especially my son, who was probably like 14 at the time. Um, but I did not give myself the option of falling into a rut.
Yeah.
Okay. I did not give myself the option
Wait,
of
so
falling
how
into.
how did you not give that option? Because I think many times people can start to feel sorry for themselves and things like that. So how did you get in that mindset that like it's not an option for me to get that way?
Part of it is, I think it's once again that God-given inner strength that I just dug really deep and found. Like, I prayed a lot. I had to pray a lot. I had to pray a lot, definitely. I thought back to my childhood, and once again, the bad the bad environment that I grew up in, and I knew that then I didn't have a choice. I was a child. I had no
Yeah.
control over what was happening. In this situation, I absolutely had some control. I could control what happened with me. I could
It's
not
actually
control what happened
really
with
powerful that
him.
you're able to
Correct. I know.
distinguish them.
I know, I know. I could control what happened with me. And so that's when I knew I needed to take action to help myself. And that meant taking myself out of the equation. And yes, trust me, it is a God given strength. Like, I have to give him.
Did that like taking yourself out of equation, did that make you feel maybe bad about yourself? Because I think
No,
many times
it
it's like
made me, it made me feel powerful. I'm like, I
yes.
kid you not. It made me feel powerful. I'm like, and that's why I use that term, being a badass. I'm like, it made me feel powerful because, like, I know who I am. I have never lacked any self confidence, any self esteem issues. I've never had that. And when I tell you, my kids are mini versions of me. It is, oh my God, it is so hilarious sometimes. They are so overly confident, but I prefer that. I totally prefer
Yeah.
that. But because I've never had those type of issues, like, I never blamed anything that I might have been doing or not doing in a relationship that caused that. I recognized that was just who he was,
Yeah.
you know? And so, I once again I made that decision that I can control what happens with me. And so, no, I felt powerful. I
And
felt
like I think
powerful.
you're like a great example for people that are like, I'm not sure whether I want to get out of a relationship or not. that once you get out, you actually feel like free, that you actually can
You
kind of be
absolutely
yourself again.
you absolutely feel free. Oh my gosh, that was like a weight lifted over me, weight lifted off of me, I
Yeah.
should say. And that's why, they say forgiveness is not for that person, it's for you. I have
Yeah.
totally forgiven him. We're able, like I said, now to have such a good what I call friendship. Um, Even though my son is grown because he's now 23, we still have conversations about him and what he's doing with his vehicle, what's happening with school. He's a senior this year, he's graduating. And so we still have all these conversations about him and just life and whatever because, I've chosen to forgive him. I don't have to deal with him on that intimate level anymore. I recognize that that is who he is. He's not a bad person, but
Yeah.
he's not marriage material.
Yeah. And like he's
He's
not for you.
he's not for me. He's not marriage material. He's not for me, but he's not a bad person in any form or fashion outside of
That's actually really
not
important to
for
distinguish
me.
both of them. The
Oh
fact that
yeah.
the person is doing something bad or not in like at the level or like for your standards, at the level of your standards, doesn't mean that they are like bad person overall.
Correct. He's not a bad person at all. He's not marriage material. He's a cheater. He doesn't understand the importance of maintaining obviously family over everything else that clearly was not as
Yeah.
important. And you know what? That's his demons. He has to deal with that. And I no longer have to deal with that.
Yeah.
That's going to be an issue that he needs to work on for him. But
If
yeah,
he
no,
wants
I
to, maybe
mean,
he's happy with the lifestyle
if
he
he
has.
wants to,
Yeah.
if he absolutely wants
Like you
to.
are not going to stay and wait for him to do that or to decide that because maybe he never decides it. So like I think it's really important to understand that like you can't change somebody, you can't fix, you
You
can't
cannot.
try to like if your relationship you can try to kind of raise that question or try to communicate your needs or wants and what you might expect, but if they're not willing to change, just don't expect it, just move on.
Correct. And it's not your
Well, not like
responsibility.
just move on. It's not that easy, but
Yeah, sometimes it's not that easy. You do have to put a plan in place, right? I mean, sometimes people have had to get out of relationships without having a plan in place for their own personal safety. That's a whole different issue. um but yes, it's not your responsibility to change that person, and I knew that. I knew it was not my responsibility, and I kid you not when I say there wasn't not even one moment when I thought that I was not doing or doing something that caused him to do anything that he did or behave the way that he did, or his cheating behavior. I did not blame myself in any form or fashion for that I realized that is who he is.
how did you
And so
realize that? Because I think many times people blame themselves or they're like, oh, I'm not attractive enough or like they don't love me enough and things like that. That's the reason why they cheat on you. How
I
did you
think
know
because
like that's not the case?
I think because I've always had, since I can remember myself being an adult, I've always had what I called I guess, a more matured way of looking at things than some people who are my age. And I think it started with the fact that my last year in high school, I was in what we called the business track in high school. And so we did on the job training. So my very first job was a legal secretary in a law firm. So I started in an environment where I was around professionals all the time. And I think that helped crafted and molded and morphed me into a more mature person than some of the people who are my age.
Yeah.
And I think having that maturity helped, in so many ways. I was able to look at things differently. I saw things with a whole new perspective. I got, without anyone teaching me, I got what I call a really good mentality around finances and how to save and what made sense about that, and wanting home ownership. So I bought my first home at, like, I think it was like 25. And once again, it was just because I was in that environment, I believe,
Yeah.
that helped, that helped, you know, um, what I call sway me towards having those having that type of mentality about what I wanted and going after things and being, being being ever so mindful of, well, this is okay, this is something that I need to strive for, and just continue thriving, and not just settling, and just wanting to do more, wanting to do more with myself, even at that young age. I think it was just seeing the people that I had in my circle. They say the 5 people in your circle are the most important ones.
Yeah.
I think because for me that started really early. That helped to that helped me to become who I was early on in my life.
Yeah.
And that's why it even started with home ownership at such a young age. And then, so, my mind just kind of got more and more developed to thinking big and wanting to do things more, wanting to travel more, and wanting to get outside of my comfort zone, and wanting to be a business owner. Like, we started a business really early on once we got married, just things that the normal individual my age were not doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's what helped me in so many ways. But definitely my childhood and what I went through was what I believe one of the determining factors of why I knew when I had enough.
Yeah.
And that was not what I signed up for, and I was not going to stay in that for everlasting time.
Yeah.
I believe I stayed too long. Let me be very clear about
I think
that.
it's always the case.
Yes, I believe I stayed too long, not so much for the kids, but trying to make it work, trying to make it work. But yes, yeah, no, I knew when it was time to get out. I got out, and I tell women all the time, this is what it looks like on the other side of divorce. I have a thriving business. My kids are grown. They are doing well on their own. They, even though my son was 14, I did not pull him into what would have been, getting him, sucked into what was going on with his dad and I. And so the only thing that I told him was that, the only thing that's going to change is dad and I are not going to be together anymore. Your dad won't live here anymore. But I didn't tell him,
How do you manage the co-parenting?
oh my God, it's awesome. It's awesome. It's awesome. And once again, it goes back to, like I said, he's not a bad person. So in the grand scheme of things, except for what a marriage should look like and him, being faithful, etc., his values about the other important things are aligned with mine.
Okay.
So when it comes to our son, like the divorce did not affect him at all. His grades didn't drop, like nothing changed except the fact that his dad was no longer living here. And that's all I told him that was going to be different, and that's all that was different. His dad
Yeah.
continued to spend so much time with him. It wasn't hauling and pulling, and like women use the kids, you know um
Yeah, I
to
think usually when people fight for
to
like
try to
custody,
drive a wedge.
like many times people forget that it's not about who gets the kid, it's about what's the best for the kid, which is like both parents.
It's about what's best for your kids, like you. And that's the thing I tell women: you need to focus on you need to focus on your kids. You need to focus on making sure your kids thrive. Your kids are the most important people in this whole equation when it comes to that, because you're already separating the family, right? You're already separating the family unit, but you have to focus on your kids and recognize that with the ignorance and immaturity of what some women do, your kids are the one that are suffering.
Yeah.
The kids are the one that's suffering, and it's so unfair to them. It's so unfair to them. And so, my son, who was the youngest at the time, he didn't I was not going to put any of that on him. I was so focused on him because my daughter was already grown. But I was so focused on him and making sure that he was going to be okay, that there was no way I was going to, do anything that was going to affect him negatively. No. So he's he has always thrived. He is a really good young man. He's now a senior. He'll be graduating this summer. He's made the dean's list so many times. We have a great relationship. We stay in contact. He's only like 15 minutes away from home, actually, Austria. He
Yeah.
goes to college in Georgia. But, we stay in touch because, I'm not a helicopter mom, but I stay plugged into, what's happening with him
Yeah, I think
because they need
that's like a
guidance,
really
right?
good like distance to keep. It's not like you're not there. It's not like you're always there, but you're still available when he needs you.
Absolutely. And he still calls me with just simple things because the good thing is he doesn't act as if he's Mr. Know-it-all because he knows he doesn't know squat. And so
Oh,
he does.
that's a good that's really good.
But he still calls to get my opinions on things. Yes. Yes. We have a really good relationship. Both of my kids, we have a really good relationship. I call them my mini me's. But it
Okay.
all starts with how you raise your kids.
Yeah.
It all starts with how you raise your kids. And the same thing with relationships. When you build what you know is a solid foundation in so many ways in our relationships in your lives, it just, that foundation is what withstands everything else.
Yeah.
It spans the gamut of relationships in our lives in so many ways. When you build a solid foundation, whatever that look like for the type of relationship that you have, whether it's with a parent, your child, your other half,
Mhm.
it's all about building a foundation. And
Yeah.
I guess most people don't think about it that way you know
Yeah, well, I think it's hard to think about it many times when you are so like excited. Like usually when you start a relationship, it's exciting. Like it's a new
of
person.
course,
There's so
of
much to
course.
explore, but I think many times we get too like distracted with those things that we forget about like the fundamentals.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. And that's why I say when you know better, you do better. Because, if you're doing things the same all this time, you're continuously doing things the same and nothing is changing, then you need to figure out what needs to be done
Yeah.
differently.
Or like
You
don't expect things to change. Like
don't
that's
expect things to
it's like if
change.
you have bad relationship after bad relationship, maybe start to look in the mirror as well. Like it's not the other person because there's something or some way how you attract those people. So
Correct.
maybe start to work on
Definitely.
yourself.
Once again, taking that accountability for a role in relationships, yes, because it absolutely could be the type of person we're attracting. You're absolutely right about that. And that's why, I do what I do because, I tell people all the time, at some point in our lives, we all need help with something. We
Yeah.
absolutely do. I know I needed help with my business, hence I have two business coaches.
I think it's also important to learn to ask for that help and not feel
You
like
have,
guilty for asking
yes.
it.
And you do have to recognize that you do want to get help and actually, like you said, ask for help. Yes, don't let your pride prevent you from reaching
Nobody
out.
can see that I don't know something.
Yes,
I
don't
think I
let
was like that for like really long time. And then with time I was like,
what
okay, like, well, I don't know this. Somebody else knows. I might as well just go and ask them. And they helped me.
yes, sometimes we just need to ask for help. And not let our to stubbornness of thinking that, well, shoot, I can figure it out on my own. I'm an
Yeah, like,
adult. I
well,
can
you
figure it
can
out.
figure it out, but like you have only limited amount of time to live.
Exactly.
So
How much time is it gonna take? You're so right. How much time is it gonna take me to figure it out? Do I want to waste this time? Like, what is my time? What is wasting time gonna cost me? And for
yeah,
like people in relationships, I'm glad you kind of touched on that because, like, for example, in relationships, when you've wasted all this time with that person that is not right for you, that's not going to change, you've seen the same patterns, um nothing is different, it's costing you a lot.
yeah.
It's costing you time you can't ever get back. It's costing you
Also like new lessons because like you can learn as like limited amount of lessons with this one person of like pretty much like what you don't want, which is important lesson to learn. What is it that you actually don't
Definitely,
want? But
we
then like at
definitely
some point
do.
you're like, okay, I have to move on. So like even like talking about like waste of time, I would never look at anything as waste of time as long as you learn from it. Because bad relationship, oh, I know what I don't want.
Yes, and you're so right, that you actually have to be mindful of that. You're learning a lesson from it. Yes, because our mistakes don't define who we are. We're
Yeah.
supposed to learn and grow from them. We're supposed to learn and grow. And when I use that phrase, wasting time or wasting your time, what happens is that the longer, for example, you stay in a bad relationship, you're costing yourself a lot. You're
Also them,
costing.
because like you just know that you're not a match. So now you're both wasting your time trying to make this work, or like you trying to stick to this person where like, well, we just have to go separate ways. Like it's time.
Yeah, and when you're in it, you're definitely not thinking that.
Well, yeah, then you
um
think something else. Well, maybe this is going to work. They are going
yes,
to change.
I really feel that he says this time he's going to change, but you're
Like
also
this
blocking the
time.
correct this time. But you're also blocking the blessings of finding that person who is the right man for you.
Who like
You're
you wouldn't have
blocking.
to have a lot of this times. They will just be like that from the beginning.
Yes, you're blocking the blessings of finding that person. And so I try to get women to understand that when you stay in a bad relationship, the longer you stay, you're blocking the blessings of finding the right man. And clearly, we know that, yes, the right man out there, he is very rare. He is few and far between, but
Yeah.
he exists. But he exists. There are good men, there are men
Like
who are
another
looking.
way how I have viewed it like myself, and I have said any other people as well, is like while you are working on yourself, your partner is working on themselves as well, and then at some
Yes,
point you will meet, but you're
correct.
both
I'm
like
so
working on
glad
yourself.
you said that. I am so glad you said that. I love it because that's where I was going to touch on next, that there are men out there looking for the same type of relationships that you're looking for, and it is so worth it to wait until you find that right person, not thinking, well, it's going to take me 10 years to find him, life is flying
Yeah,
by.
or like
Well,
just like focus on working on yourself to get yourself in a
correct,
place where you attract that person. Because now,
correct.
like, let's say, and I have had conversations with people when they were like, oh, like I was in a mindset where I was working on myself, and I wasn't looking for a relationship because I was tired of it. I was just working on myself. And that's when I attracted the right person, because you were working on yourself and you
Because
attract
you're
different
working on
people.
yourself. Correct. It's not, you don't go out literally looking for that person. Trust me.
Yeah, like you can't find somebody by looking for them. Like I
No.
think I think that's pretty much like that's what I would define as waste of time, where you just seek for somebody to come and be like this, like the savior that is going to be like, I don't know, your future husband, whatever. Like you can't really find somebody by looking for them. Like you
No.
can date and like things like that, but if you now, let's say now that my project for next 6 months is to find my
Correct.
husband.
As if he, like you said, as if he's a project, or he's an object that you have to go looking for. Yes. No, you don't go looking. You just, like you said, you work on yourself, and trust me, I really believe God puts people, the right people in our paths. We don't always see when it's the right people. We don't always see the right path, but I really believe he does create those opportunities for us. It is up to us to see. And
Yeah.
so, what I also say to women is that, when they say things to me like, well, I pray to God about it and I'm just going to wait and see what happens. Well, my famous response to that is, God helps those who help themselves.
Yeah,
Okay. God helps those who help themselves. And
that's
so,
a really good point.
what that means is that you may be in the grocery store and God may put him in that aisle. And no, you do not stand at the end of the aisle waiting for him to approach you. This is 2021. Okay. He may be at the other end of the aisle, and no, you don't wait for him for him to approach you. You may have to approach him because
Yeah.
God put him in your path, but he's not going to do the work for you.
Yeah.
You know, he would have put him in your path, but then you have to do your path. You have to do your part. I'm sorry. You have to do your part. You know, so yes, I really believe that God helps those who help themselves. And so we each have a part to play in what happens in our lives, in our relationship, just in everything that we do. And it's up to us to recognize that we do have a part to play and actually doing that part.
I think
Not just
also
waiting.
like one,
He's not gonna drop in your lap.
yeah. No. It's like, and now life is perfect and you do nothing. Like another thing that I was thinking as you were speaking, that's something that I was talking about, let's say happiness. When you focus on getting happy, you're telling yourself that you're lacking something. And I think the same is like, let's say when you focus on like getting money or getting successful, you're telling yourself that you're not successful. And it might be the same with relationships. It's like when you look for this one person and like that's your main focus, you're telling yourself that you're lacking something. But when you're in a place
Yeah,
where you don't look, you don't feel like you're lacking something, and that's when you attract them.
that is so true. That is so true. And it comes from having that sense of you know who you are and you're comfortable with who you are. You know that you know that you are valuable. You know that you are enough. You know,
Yeah,
but you have to have that mindset that you are enough and that someone else is just going to add to the goodness and the greatness that you already bring. You
yeah,
know, not complete you. You know, and that's why I said it's so important to recognize that we are all responsible for our own happiness. You know, we are all responsible for our own happiness. You don't leave your happiness in someone else's hands. You don't,
yeah,
because they can't make you happy to the extent, or it's not their job to even try to make you happy. It is your job, your responsibility. So when in fact they don't make you happy like you're expecting them to, then you're not pissed at them. Then you're not ready to lash out at them because you've now put something in their hands that they are not responsible for. It is so unfair. But you
yeah.
have to recognize that, you know,
Yeah.
and not everyone recognizes that, right? You know,
Yeah, well, it
not
takes a
everyone.
lot of self work even to be aware of yourself. Like I have been working on my self awareness like for years, and I
Me too.
still find, and I think like the more you work on yourself, the more you see what you need to work on.
I agree. I am right there with you. I am right there with you. We're all a work in progress, but you do have to be conscious and ever so mindful of that, yes, that
Yeah,
we can always continue to improve. We can always work on things that we want to see another version of ourselves in, a better version of ourselves, take what we know about ourselves to a whole other level,
yeah,
you know. But you have to be conscious of that and actually put in the work to make it happen.
yeah.
You know, it takes work, just like relationships take work, right?
Everything takes work, I think.
Working on yourself, that's why it's called working on yourself. You know, it takes action. Action is necessary. So
And
just
like
like
one
relationships.
thing that my mentor said is that hard work is free.
Correct. Correct.
You
Correct.
don't have to pay
Correct.
anything to do hard work.
Correct. And see, that's the thing. You know, like you talk about relationships and it takes work. Well, you know what? It should not be considered quote unquote hard work. It should be proactive. So you're constantly doing things to improve the relationship, to make it better. And that way it's not you're waiting until something, you know, the bottom falls out. So then you have
Yeah.
to do all this climbing back to get back to where you were. It's being proactive. It's
I
being
think with
proactive in your
relationship it's
relationship.
like everything. The more work you put in, the more you get out. It's really simple
Absolutely.
equation.
It is it is such a simple equation.
The
You're
more you
so
put in, the
right.
more you're gonna get out. Like
You're
that's
so
simple.
right. Yes. You're so right. And that's why it has to be proactive. It has to be continuous. You know, it has to be constant.
Yeah, actually like continuous. That's like a key word. It's not like you get in relationship, you work for 2 months and now you stop and you get married and you just stay the same.
Yeah, then you're comfortable. Well, I already
Yeah.
have him. We're married, and I mean, what else do I need to do?
What else
Yes,
do you want?
yes, yeah. No, it has to be continuous. you have to keep you have to keep the spark and the spice in your relationship, and you have to be ever so mindful of that. The fact that it's a relationship means there are two of you.
Yeah.
If you definitely can't revert back to the mindset of, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. It's now a we. How does my actions affect him?
Yeah.
How does his actions affect me? Like, it has to be a constant um realization that your actions does affect someone. What you say, what you do, things that you want to happen and you take action to make them happen because you wanted them to. Well, how does that affect the other person that's in the equation?
Yeah.
You just have to be ever so mindful of these things. And most people just aren't. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, and
Most
I think
people.
like even if somebody struggles to see those things, like just ask them, what do you think I could work on, or what you want me to improve so that like maybe you feel better in relationship or something like that, because many times we don't see those things, or we might not even know what the other person wants. So you have to be able, and when they tell you, listen and don't
Yeah,
argue back.
listen, correct. And you know what? I'm so glad you said that, because that's why it's so important to constantly communicate. Like, relationships are just like a car, they need a tune up, they need checkups. So you have to constantly communicate these things. And you need to have check ins, whatever that looks like. It could be a weekly check in, that may be too often for some people. It could be a monthly check in, but you have to check in.
Yeah.
You don't just drive your car and you don't do anything to it. It's going to run down, it's
Yeah.
going to run out of gas. It's the same thing with your relationship. You have to check in to see what may need fine tuning, you know um what may need to change, things that you may need to do a little differently. But you need to have those kind of
Yeah.
conversations,
I
to
I
act.
heard again, like mentioning Jordan Peterson, he said that you should have like, let's say 90 minutes when it's just like dating or being together, and then another 90 minutes a week where you sit down and you talk about like some basic stuff like family, some household things, like, or like where you're going in like future and things like that. But you have those like weekly checkups where you're pretty much on track, and you don't have to like, and you also don't have to be like, oh, we don't have time to talk about this now, but you know that you will have this time at the end of the week, or like whenever you
Exactly.
decide that you can just sit down and have these conversations. Then you don't
Exactly.
have to be like, oh, you never have time to talk. Well, we have this time where you sit, like
Exactly.
we sit down and we have these conversations.
Exactly. That's why check-ins are so important. Yes, you're so right about that. And he's so right about that, because, if there comes a time where, once again, there's that issue that it may not be the right timing today to talk about it, because you're not in a good mood. He's not in a good mood. You got home from work, you're tired. Well, tomorrow is your set time to have your check-in.
Yeah.
So
So there's
you
no
know, you have
point to raise it now.
correct. You should you're giving yourself what I consider probably more than sufficient time to calm down if you were not in the
Yeah.
best mood that and so that's why it's so important to have check-ins. Yes. And that way the communication flows, it's constant. You're not letting things fester, because if you're being genuine, if you're being honest with your partner, you're going to talk about those issues during the check-ins.
Just as you said it, I was
No?
thinking about how important it is to have these honest conversations where you both have this agreement that whatever we are going to say, we're not going
Yeah.
to get offended or get angry or something like that. Because I think sometimes it's hard to have honest conversations when you are afraid to hurt somebody. So I think it's important to be like, okay, now we're going to have an honest conversation where, like, if
Yeah.
you tell me something that hurts me, I have to take it. Or, like, I will communicate it back what actually was hurting me, and then we can work from there. But we need to have those honest conversations where, like, you hurt me, I hurt you, but it's just for our own, like, development. Not where we're, like, trying
Yeah.
to hurt each other, but saying things that you
Yes.
want to say that you have been holding in because you don't want to hurt the other person.
I want to hurt that person. Yeah, no, what I tell my clients, like you say that, is having open, honest, and safe communication is essential. Like, yes, you have to be honest. you know, and if he's the right person, you know, and you think both ways, if he or she's the right person, you are comfortable having open, honest, and safe communication. You know, that's the only way your relationship is going to work. That's the only way your relationship is going to thrive. If
Yeah.
you are being open, if you are being honest, if you do feel that you're in a safe space, or that that person provides you with that comfort level where you do um, definitely feel that you can open up to them and be honest and communicate about what I call the good and the bad, you know.
How would you define like that safe space? How can one, like, let's say two people in a relationship, how can they create that like safe space when they can have these honest conversations?
Well, it definitely has to start with um, knowing who that person is, you know, and that's why they, and that's why having that, what I call a blueprint of your ideal partner, is so important, because you need to know the personality of this person, you know, and his personality. If we're going to talk about us as women, his personality needs to align with yours. So you'll know that he is someone who is all about honesty. He's respectful, you know, he's understanding, he's willing to communicate with you. And so once you have all of those things, or once he has all of those qualities, you do feel comfortable and that you're in a safe space, because you know
Yeah.
he's going to listen, you know he's going to try to understand where you're coming from, you know he's going to respect you as a woman, right? He's going to listen, he's going to pay attention, he's going to try to really understand where you're coming from. You know, so you can obviously continue to communicate. So there's that open line of communication, there's that safe space. You will know that there is a safe space with him because he would have already shown you that that's who he is, you
Yeah.
know, by his personality, him being respectful, him communicating with you, wanting to communicate, being understanding, you know, being trustworthy, being consistent.
Yeah.
You know, he would have shown you all those qualities, so you would know that it's a safe space, and then it
Yeah.
provides you with that comfort level, you
Yeah,
know,
makes
to be
sense.
able to open up to him.
I think like also important thing is well, usually in your previous relationships you learn like certain things. So it's also important maybe if they're not able to give that safe space to be able to communicate what it is. So let's say if you have a conversation and like your partner is sitting on phone, you're like, okay, so I don't feel heard or that you're paying attention, and for me to be able to feel safe to share like certain things that might be like more making me like more vulnerable, I need to have your full attention. Otherwise, I don't feel like I am in safe space to actually share those things. So I think it's important to be able to communicate what is it that not only like know what is it that makes you feel safe. Well, it's kind of both ways. So you
Yeah,
want to know what is it that helps you feel safe that they bring, but also be able to communicate if they don't bring that, what would help you to feel more safe having that conversation.
correct, that makes sense, and that's why it's so important that people recognize that, okay, if you've ever been in a relationship, you have emotional baggage, right? We all have it. Some people just have heavier baggages, right? Like they're dragging it around, it's heavy,
How would you
and
define
weighting
emotional
them down.
baggage? How would you define it?
Well, we have emotional baggage because it's unresolved issues from a past
Okay, yeah,
relationship. Like we all have some level of that.
yeah,
You know, the relationship ended and certain things didn't get resolved, so it creates emotional baggage. Um, you know, what's important is recognizing that you have it and being able to get rid of it. Oh my God, my stomach is growling. Did you hear it? My stomach is growling and it's like, feed me, Seymour. Um, so, you know, we all have emotional baggage because we've been in previous relationships. So when people let their emotional baggage create problems in their next relationship, it's because they don't even recognize that it is called emotional baggage, that they're dragging it from one relationship to the other, whether it's having lack of trust, whether it's not being able to communicate, whether it's not feeling that they're worthy enough. So, they go into
Yeah.
the next relationship with all this baggage, and it's going to just create havoc. It's what I call a bull in a china shop. It's going to wreak havoc on your relationship. It's going to
Yeah.
absolutely wreak havoc. But we all have baggage. It's just the the weight of the baggage, how heavy it is, and for some people it's extremely heavy.
And also how
But you
much the
have
other
to be
person can
sure.
take.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, how much the other person can take, because like I said, you could be a bull in a china shop, and you think about what that looks like. There's only but so much that that person probably would be willing to take.
Yeah.
you know so it's being ever so mindful of those things. Like there's so many things that go into dating, um like so many things that go into dating that matter in order for you to have a healthy relationship, but most people don't think about them. Unfortunately, they don't recognize that they need to work on those things. They never actually work on those things.
I think
And
many times it's
the
because they
sad,
don't really see the fault in themselves.
they don't, absolutely. And the sad thing is, Austria, is that some people have never in their entire lives had a healthy relationship, ever,
Yeah.
ever in their entire lives.
And not
You
only
know,
with others, but with themselves as well.
correct, correct, correct. That is so true. I mean, and and not just not having a healthy romantic relationship, but relationships with anyone else.
Yeah.
And once again, it goes back to that person. Yes, it goes back to that person. So I think it's just so sad that um there's so much dysfunction in relationships as a whole, not just romantic relationships. There's so much dysfunction in
Yeah.
relationships that people have normalized, that they don't even see that it's dysfunctional,
Yeah, because
you
like
know.
that's usually it's been like frustrating for me to try to explain somebody that this is like not normal. It's not the way it should be. Like
No,
that's actually like that's how it shouldn't be. But like for them it's really hard to understand it because they have never been in different situation, or let's say
correct.
they have never resolved conflicts differently or things like that, so they don't really know how it is not to be in that situation.
And they've normalized that, like that is the norm in their world, and
Yeah.
so that's what they're
And
used
that's when
to.
they
And
yeah and that's when they attract something like that. They're not surprised. They're like, oh, this is normal. And when somebody from the
yeah,
side comes in and they're like, well, it's not. What do you mean it's
yes.
not? Like it's the way it is. Like that's my reality. So
and I, and I guess that's why, for me, having grown up in an abusive household, you know for me, and I just, of course, it just, okay, so let me just keep it real. We know that common sense is not always common, right? I mean, it
no,
may
it's
sound
not.
however it sounds, but that's the long and short of it. So for me, I guess early on, for me, the way I looked at that, it wasn't so much the common sense part of it. It was knowing right from wrong. That's what I chalked it up to be, knowing right from wrong. And because of the way I grew up, like once I became an adult, I knew that was wrong. Even though I saw it as a child and I didn't like what was happening, didn't like what I saw, I may not have necessarily called it that it was wrong and recognized so much that it was wrong. But once I became an adult, there's no doubt,
Yeah.
that I knew right from wrong. And so once again, I take it back to that we always have a choice. You choose right or you choose wrong. There's right and there's wrong. Are
And
they
you can
level?
also choose that you don't have a choice.
Correct. Correct. So it's just, I really just take it back to what I concluded for myself. And I guess I just expect other people to just kind of do the same thing, have the same mentality, have the same thoughts about it, that we always have a choice. And you just choose which path you want to go. You choose which direction you want to be, one you want to be a part of. You choose who you want to share your heart and your life with. You you choose what actions you want to take. We always have a choice.
Yeah. We
We
might
have free will.
actually we might actually like finish off on this note. Like, what is it like? Maybe what's the path that you're moving towards, or like what's something that you're working toward, or you work towards, like what people can expect from you in the future.
Oh my goodness, just greatness. Now, what does greatness look like? I haven't totally visualized it. I haven't totally
Do you have like
visualized.
a visual? Do you have like a vision board?
I do have a vision board. I do have a vision board. I need to update it. It's very old. I do have a vision board. But
I
when
have one right here. See, like at the
oh,
bottom.
that's yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Do
have
you
several ones, but that's
do you
like the latest
update it
one.
often? Do you update it often,
I
or
think
you
it,
just
it
try to
depends
work
because
towards
I,
the
I
goal?
have like, let's say I have some that are, let's say, for a few months, some are for years, some are for life.
Got it.
So they're like different. They change.
Okay. Okay. You have different ones. Okay. Well, that's really awesome that you have
Yeah.
different ones, because then they serve different purposes, correct?
Yeah. And like, let's say every morning I sit and I look at that one and I visualize it for like 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. Yes. I need to update mines right now because I only have one. I only have
Yeah.
one. But when I
And
think
also like when you
about,
when you create the vision board, you can write on the other side or save somewhere like when did you create it. And it's really
yeah,
interesting to look back what you created like 1 year ago and what you have now, and many things you might already have like got in your life.
already accomplished.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct. That does make sense. Yeah, that does make sense. And I guess if I had to think on what I have visualized, not fully visualized it, but what I have somewhat visualized for, where I want to take my business and where I want to be is, because I'm so passionate about helping women and empowering them, themselves and their love lives. Like, one of my goals is to, create a nonprofit foundation for women who don't have the resources, who don't have the support system, and they need to get out of abusive relationships. They need some place where they can just pack their kids up at a moment's sight, at the drop of a dime, and just get out, because it is all about their safety and nothing else at that point. So it is creating a foundation where, they do have those type of resources where, it's an environment where they can learn how to get back to loving themselves, because for a lot of them, they would have lost themselves, and it's very heartbreaking.
Yeah, and like the longer you stay in that relationship, the more it can damage you.
The more it causes more a mental, emotional, and physical toll
And I
on you.
think also it's
Absolutely.
the harder to get out.
It's harder to get out. Yes. Because you feel you've invested so much time, and then you do have, and they unfortunately have that fear, because
Yeah.
their mind have already been conditioned and brainwashed to have that fear of what's going to happen if they leave.
Yeah, like it
you
you,
know
you get in that like powerlessness.
Correct.
That's the word, space where you just feel like you're powerless. You can't really do anything.
You're powerless. Yeah, so it's just having that organization, that provides them with those type of resources, that type of support, where they and their children can actually start over, help them get back on their feet, find a job, make sure the kids are in school, that they're getting the type of probably therapy that they need.
Yeah.
A lot of people need therapy because of the situations that they've been in. So ultimately, that is what I visualize for where I want to take my business on a whole other level, and just being able to have, like I said, those type of resources available for women who need it. Because I think for a lot of women, they don't feel that they have some place to go. They don't feel that they have someone that they
I
can
think also
trust.
many people they don't even communicate that they have that kind of relationships because I
No,
think there comes a
no,
lot
because
of
they're
shame and
ashamed.
embarrassment
They're,
when it comes to that.
correct, correct. They're ashamed to tell their family members, even probably a best friend.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, would they probably tell a stranger? Maybe. but their best friend, family member, they don't want to share that type of information. And so absolutely, they don't go to those people for help, when those should be their support system. But unfortunately, they're not turning to them for help. The family members and friends don't even know that they need help. So just providing those kind of opportunities and resources for women like that, because there's so many women that deserve to be in, not so much deserve to be, that they deserve to be in a healthy relationship, but even before that, like, they need to get back to knowing themselves, loving themselves, being aware of their value, being aware of, their self-worth, and sometimes, some people just, you can't do that on your own. You
Yeah.
can't do that on
It
your
is
own.
really hard. I
You-
remember when I started when I started working on myself, which was like I think I was like 14 years old or something. I realized
yeah.
something is wrong with me, or like I'm not that like confident and things like that. And what happened
Mhm.
was that because I didn't really have any help apart from like books, is that I would identify why is it that I feel this way, and then I would be like, I feel bad about that, and then I feel even worse, and I didn't know how to get out of it. So you
To get out.
actually, when you're trying to do those things by yourself, you can actually just go in circles. That like, okay, I am aware why I am this way, but then I start to feel bad about being this way or why I got this way, and then you just start to go down, like, and you just go in circles. So it is important to
Yeah,
have
you have,
somebody
and
from
you,
the side.
correct, and you have to give yourself some grace, right? You have to give
Yeah,
yourself some grace in the process, because you're aware of it. You think that you are doing something to try to help yourself, but you just don't realize, like, at your age, you just didn't realize that you didn't know how to help yourself.
yeah. And
You
like in
know,
that
you,
moment, you don't really think about how grateful you are for acknowledging or seeing that. You're just like, oh my gosh, I'm a mess.
yes,
And like you don't know how
yes,
to like fix yourself. So I think it's really important to have somebody from the side that is maybe also less emotionally involved in your life, that is able to help you.
yes. I mean, that's why we all need a support system in so many ways. We all need a support system, for so many different reasons. I mean, you could have one friend that, she's there to cry with. Another one who's there to give you that hard love talk that you
Yeah.
need. It may not be the same friend for both of those, but there's that one friend who she's gonna keep it real with you. She's gonna practice tough love. That's what I meant to say. Tough
Yeah.
love. She's gonna give it to you straight. You need to hear it. You don't want to hear it, but you need to hear it. So you need a support system. Some of us are fortunate enough to find that support system in one person, perhaps, but others you may need two or three
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, like it's okay because like you can have people that you go and like party with, you can have people that you
Yeah,
have serious conversations with. Like each
exactly.
person has like different like purpose. Not to
Correct.
not to
Yeah,
put people down, but like that's just like with some people you just go and have fun. With some people you just like have like educational
yeah.
conversations. Somebody else you might talk about like kids or like relationships and things like that.
Correct, correct. But you have people in your circle who serve a purpose, yes. And not that they're just serving a purpose as in you're using them, but no,
Yeah.
they're not just in your
That's what
life
I was
because,
trying to explain.
correct, correct, correct. Yes, correct. You have them, they serve a purpose. They bring value to your life in some form or fashion. You bring value to theirs, and it's mutual,
Yeah.
but it's so important to have a support system. Yes, very, very,
Yeah. Well,
very.
thank you for coming and for having well,
Sure.
this conversation was amazing. I really enjoyed it.
It was. Thank you so much for touching on some of the topics that, yes, I mean, it's, the important topics,
We didn't
you
even
know.
get past the first secret.
We'll have to do that in another episode. That's
Yeah, well,
perfectly
I would
fine.
love to have you back on sometime and then you can update about how you're getting on with that with everything pretty much.
Yes, yes, no, definitely. No, definitely. It was a pleasure to be here. You know what? And if I had to wrap up with any words. It would just be for that woman that is watching, that is within the sound of my voice, to always know your worth,
Yeah.
realize that you are enough, you bring value to your relationships, recognize that you hold the power to control the course of your relationship, and to truly acknowledge that just being in a relationship is not enough, but that you should be in a healthy one.
And
If I
like you
had
are
to
the
leave
one
with
who is
any
controlling your
parting words,
life, not somebody
yeah,
else. This is
correct.
a good end note.
Correct.
Thank you for
Correct.
coming.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
All right.
It's a
Okay.
pleasure. Okay, well, we will talk again soon. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Thank you.